Hi everyone.
On pause.
Morning. Can you hear me? Hello. Good morning everyone. How you guys are doing? So maybe one can just chat or speak so that I can know that you can hear me well or everything is fine. We can start. Yeah, I think I can hear. So are you guys hear me well or are you guys see the slide?
Okay, I can see the slide here.
Okay. And you can see my sound also. Everything is okay.
Yes, I can hear you very well. Everything is going on well.
Okay, I got you. You're Chima. Yeah. So nice to meet you all after so this is kind of we are in very bad situation overall. So the whole world is very tough situation going on. So in Winnipeg we have so far 17 cases, and in Canada I think it's about 600 cases so far. So we have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. No social gathering. Okay. So so far the assignment 3, I think you guys are working on. So if you have any problem, let me show you one thing. You can also create some discussion on your Nexus. Okay. So if I go here, so suppose this is, you can see it, right? The web page.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is your Nexus, right? So if you so the very first page is this one, right? And if you click this like communication tab, there is a page called discussion. Okay, so if you click there, so you can see that you can discuss about your assignment 3 problems here as well. So why this is better is because like whenever you email me, okay, whenever you are emailing me, what is happening, like it's just like you and me are communicating. But whenever you post some discussion here, okay, so it can be seen by all. So what will happen, like if any other have the same problem, they will be benefited by that. Okay, so that's the main benefit of this like discussion forum of your Nexus. Okay, so I will encourage you, if you have any question regarding the assignment, like I got like 3 of the emails. I already replied 2 of them, and one student is I will reply it soon. But if you have any question regarding the assignment, okay, you can like post it here. Okay, starting a new thread. You can post it here, and then I will like reply. I will give you some hint, or if any other solve the problem, he or she can also reply here. So it's kind of a forum. Okay, so have you tried it before in any other courses?
Yes, I tried it in my indigenous courses.
Okay, so it's better, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. It helps.
Okay, so you can change your name also. So Chima is the great king now. Okay. So anyway, I think we should start. So far I can how many participants we have? Not like many. I think like 15. So I'm not sure. I already announced on Tuesday that we will have this online class today. So maybe we can start. So anyone can join later also. I think so. So today's topic is exception handling. So let's start. Okay, so before starting, what do you know about the exception handling? Or what kind of experience you have?
I just know it has like try catch Syntax, yes.
Try catch, yes, but can you tell me, like, is there any difference between, like, sometimes what I want to share with you guys is that sometimes what you do, whenever you write a class, after the class name, you put some throws, right? What is that actually? That is also exception, right? Like you say, like in our hierarchy class or interface class, we say like after the class name, we say throw IO exception, comma, class not found exception, right? So those are also exception, right? And also we are handling what kind of exception is very common to you? Anyone? Like array index out of bound, right? This is the most common exception maybe you got so far, right? Or file not found exception, right? So there are many exceptions, right? So they are like kind of different, right? So one we are just saying after the class name, another we are saying kind of we are catching by the try catch block, right? So there are some difference in exceptions, right? So we'll see one by one. So at first, what is an exception, right? So an event that occurs during program execution that disrupts the normal flow for sure, right? So when an exception occurs, an exception object is created. So we'll see a flowchart like how these exceptions are actually generated in our Java class, okay? The object contains information about the situation and the state of the program at that time. The creation of an exception object and its handoff to Java runtime is called throwing an exception, okay? So rather than this, we can go for like the practical example. So I already uploaded all the code necessary with the book in your Nexus. You can see that also. Going to the next slide. So we have mainly two kind of exceptions. Okay, so one is we are calling checked exceptions, another we are calling the unchecked exceptions. So what is this checked or unchecked exceptions? Sorry. So at first we are going through unchecked exceptions. Okay, so this is basically whatever the programmer creates any logical error or not. Okay, whenever you are solving a problem, coding for a solution, okay, you can do many logical error, right? So all of these errors, if you have some exceptions regarding those we are calling unchecked exceptions. This is not checked one, like users or programmer, not the users, the programmers can do any kind of logical error, right? So this is kind of not, we are not sure what kind of exceptions are those. So these are calling unchecked exceptions, okay? So it's generally considered to be something that should never occur, right? So you shouldn't do any kind of like logical error for sure. So that's why it's saying that that should never occur, right? So if one does occur, the program should terminate, right? Indicates a logic error in the program. And suppose one example can be array index out of bound. Suppose you are trying to access a index of an array, but that index is not present, right? So it's logical error, right? And it will throw array index out of bound for sure, right? So that this kind of error we are calling array index, not the error, this kind of exception we are calling array index out of bounds error exceptions, okay? So then we have the checked exceptions, right? So what can be here? Like what can be the example of this? So you know that we can have the file not found exception, right? Maybe or maybe you are end of the file but you are trying to access the file as well, so that is the end of file exception, right? So then we also, like we already know, like we have the IO exception, we have the class not found exception. So all of the recognized exception not related to the logical error of the program, all are these are actually the checked exceptions, okay? So what is this basically? Represent the situations from which a program can be expected to recover. Like for these checked exceptions, the program can like gain its access if you give the correct file name maybe, or if you give the correct control. Okay, so if you have the unchecked exceptions, there is no way you can recover the program. It will terminate. Okay, you can just give some message to the screen like this kind of like whatever we print in the catch block. Okay, but for the checked exceptions, actually you have the control to make it like work after you're having that error. Okay, or you can handle that situation, like you can write some code to handle the situation. Okay, so the very common examples are like end of file exceptions. There is no file, like that normal situation, if reading a file with an unknown number of values, that is you are trying to access a line, but that line is not present in that file, something like that. Okay, another example is file not found exceptions. That is in your current directory you are accessing a file, but that file is not there. Okay, so it can easily happen. So if file name is provided by user, we can prompt for another name, right? So that's why we are saying that a program can be expected to recover. Like maybe that file is missing, you can just take another input from the user and then it will work, right? If the file is already there, maybe there is some typo whenever you are inputting the file name, right? So it will ask the file name again, you can give the file name again, and if the file is there, it will work. Okay, clear? Any questions so far? Okay, so this is actually a flow chart, and this is very, very, very important for understanding the exception handling. Okay, so so far we discussed one is unchecked exception and there is checked exceptions, right? So here you can see all of them here. So starting from the very first class, that is the object class. Like if we can remember the very first slide. Okay, so we can see that here the object, like the third bullet point, we can read here, like we already covered this. The object contains information about the situation and state of the program at that time. So this object actually here, like as in class. Okay, so everything, whatever that we are dealing with the exception, everything is inside like a child of this object class. Okay, but most of the time actually we are not using this object, we are using the throwable class because it's also a child class of the object class. Okay, so by this diagram I think you already know like what is this arrow sign means, right? So this, so who can say that what is this arrow sign means? Like after object we have arrow sign and then throwable, right? So can you say me like what does that mean? Anyone? Or you guys can chat, I think, or do you know, like I'm not sure, but maybe is there any option to chat? You can just reply or something. Anyway, so maybe no one wants to answer that one. Okay, so that means actually the throwable is a subclass, right? And object is a superclass, right? And throwable inherit the superclass called object, right? So that means that arrow sign, right? Okay, so now we have like inside, like there are two subclasses of throwable, right? So one is error and there is exception, right? So whenever we have any kind of logical error that goes into that branch called error. Okay, like the all kind of logical or unchecked exceptions that goes to the error branch. And then for the exceptions we both have the checked and unchecked one. Okay, so it has two child, one is IO exceptions and there is runtime exceptions. Okay, so this IO exceptions, it contains all the checked exceptions. Okay, and this runtime exceptions, again all kind of logical error belongs to that child. So suppose as a child of IO exceptions, you can see that file not found exception. You can see that end of file exceptions, right? So all kind of checked exceptions are belong to the IO exceptions. And also, um, also whatever the unchecked exceptions we have, okay, that is under the runtime exceptions, that is index out of bound exceptions, null pointer exceptions, maybe divide by zero exceptions, all of the like the logical exceptions, or you can see that the normal common exceptions. Okay, uh, let me admit another person. Yeah, all the logical exceptions and whatever the known exceptions regarding to the error of a programmer, those are in like under the runtime exception branch. Okay. So any questions so far? Okay, we can go forward. So how we can handle an exceptions, right? So there are two ways, right? So one is we can throw something, and that is including the try catch block, right? Okay. So how we can do that? We will go one by one. Okay. So this is how we can use the try catch block, right? Okay. So there is some definite way you need to follow for handling an exception using the try catch block, right? So whatever you are assuming that there can be an error, you should put it inside the try block, right? Okay. Whenever you are accessing a file, maybe whenever you are maybe you are declaring an array, accessing an array, you are suspicious that, or you are thinking that there can be some error. Okay, you can just put it inside the try block. So as a rule of thumb, like it's better if you put all of your code, like most of the code, inside the try block, so that whenever an error is happening, you can have some kind of message, right, rather than showing error in the compilation, right? So whenever, or like whatever the error you may have, you can catch it, right? Okay. So this catch, so you can use multiple catch even. Okay, you can use see if you already know what kind of exception you are going to have. If it is, if inside the try block all of your code is regarding the file, maybe you can just use catch file not found exception, right? Or IO exception, like that. So regarding your try block, you can assume what kind of error you can have, and inside the catch you can put the name of that exceptions. Okay, and it is case sensitive. That is, if your file name, suppose this is kind of you know that we have some kind of uh, name associated with each exception, right? So suppose file not found exception, so this F is capital, N is capital, F is capital, also E is capital, right? So you have to follow this exactly same name of the exceptions whenever you try to catch that exceptions. Okay, so we have to write here. Okay, and then maybe you can print some line that you are having these exceptions, or maybe here you can give another input so that the user can give another input and it will work, something like that. Okay, so this is all about try and catch. Okay, so whatever you are doing here inside try or catch, that's not related to the finally block. Okay, the finally is will execute every time whenever you have some exceptions. It will go to the try, like catch block, right? So after the catch block, the finally block will all the time executed. Okay, so even if you not have any exceptions, the finally block will be executed. So the thing is that the finally block is not related to the any exceptions. or if it is even catch by any exceptions is caught by the catch block, nothing matter, the finally block will be executed all the time. Okay, clear? Okay, so going forward, we have this nice flow chart, that is what will happen like whenever we have a exception or not, like whatever I am just saying in the last slide. Okay, so we are executing statement in the try block. Suppose there is no exceptions occur in the try block, even though, like if we go this branch, okay, even though it will just execute the finally block. Clear? Suppose we have an exception, right? An exception listed in the catch occur in the try block. Execute that catch block, and then again it will come back to the finally block. Okay, and after that, okay, whatever you write the code after the try statement and catch and finally block, that will execute at last. Okay, it's just like the control flow, how control flows between the try, catch, and finally, and then if you have any other code. Okay, clear? So now we are going to solve a problem. It's called like suppose uh, we are accessing a file in the same folder. So what will happen, like if we don't have that file, or if you like mistype the file name or something. Okay, so our class name is read binary. We have a new, like we have a main function or method. So we are saying that it throws IO exceptions, right? So whenever we are working with the checked exceptions, so this is very common term that IO exception can be happen, okay? Because we are trying to access a file, okay? And then uh, since we are using the like a file, we have to have this data input stream for sure. You already know from the file IO class, right? Yeah. And then we are trying to access a serializable file, because this is, we are trying to read a binary file. Okay, so we are throwing this IO exception because this IO exception actually include that file not found exception. Okay, so this IO exception occurs if the file doesn't exist, right? The program is terminated immediately and called trace. Okay, here. So now how we can overcome this? Like if we just do like this, it will not overcome that problem, right? Because what will happen, it will just terminate, right? So, so that's why like it will throw that IO exception, right? So after throwing that, or maybe if we have this kind of problem, what we can do, we can just put try and catch block, right? So what we can do here, okay? So this example, I also uploaded it to your Nexus. You can also run it in your computer right now if you want to have a look like what is happening here. Okay, so let me explain what is happening. So at first, you already declared this instance of the data input stream that is called the IS, right? So whenever you are here, okay, so at first you are trying to access, right? So this line, this is equal to new data input stream, new in file input stream file name. Okay, so whenever you see your previous lectures, we kind of combine these two lines, right? Okay, so so here actually we are trying to do at first like the data input stream. So we are, so inside here we're trying to access a file, right? So and file name is a different variable. Okay, so what we are doing here, so whenever this line is a success, right, we are saying a message called success file found. But if this line throws any kind of exception, so most probably it will just throw a file not found exceptions, right? So we are creating a instance of that file not found exceptions, right? In our catch block, we are saying that file not found exceptions, then space, then E, right? Okay. And then we are saying that error file not found. Okay. So don't bother about the first parameter, like of the G option pan. It's kind of we are saying null because that's kind of, I think maybe the header of the caption pane. You can put like error message or something if you want. Okay, clear? So so we're catching that error, right? And finally block, we can just say that finally we are exiting or something. Okay, clear? So if this try and catch block is clear to everyone, do you have any question regarding this? Okay. Just a moment. I think someone wants to try to join or something. I think you guys can unmute yourself, right? I think it's not controlled by me, or I think so. Yeah. So if you want, you can ask me any question, unmuting your like by your in your side Zoom. I think so. Yeah, so going to the next slide, what will we have here actually, like we have this, suppose what we're doing here, so if you can remember, we have 5 integers, right? So in read binary.java file, I already uploaded those files also. So we have 5 integers, right? So what will happen like if we try to access another integer after 5 integers? Okay, so that is what we are going to solve now. Okay, clear? So so we are trying to use like separate methods for here. So we are creating a method called get file, that is opening a file. Then we're trying to use another method called get total, that is you know that it will count like how many lines we have. Okay, and then we have another method at last for closing the file. So inside our main method we are trying to access those 3 sub methods. Okay, so at first whenever we're saying data input stream instance is equal to, we are just calling that method called get file. Okay, then we are declaring a variable called total, and then if for sure that input stream if not equal to null, we are again calling another method called get total to determine how many lines of code or how many lines of input I have in that input file. Okay, and then at last we are closing the file. Okay, we can go, we can start like one by one. So at first get file. So what is this actually? So we are at first we are saying like what is okay, so I got your message. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So, yes. So I got your message. Like how we can handle. So is it like this chat? You all guys can see it, right?
Mm.
Okay, that's great. So how we can handle this kind of exceptions? Exceptions in thread main Java class cast exception class Java declare this cannot be cast class. Okay. Course. Okay, so you are having an exception regarding to your assignment problem, right?
Yes, assignment 3.
Yeah. So rather than discussing it here, can you just post it to our discussion forum?
Sure.
I will explain the answer there. Okay.
Oh,
Clear?
perfect.
So rather than discussing it here, let us first just finish our today's class, and then maybe in the office hour you can also call me, like just using the Zoom. Okay. So anyone in my office hour, so my office hour will be starting just after the class and up to 1:30. So if you want to have a chat with me by Zoom, you are welcome to do that in my office. So also office hour is online now, right? Okay. So it's better if we discuss this problem there, right? Okay. Clear? Okay.
Yeah.
So going back to the slide, we have this get file, right? Okay, so what we're doing here, so at first again we are taking a file name, right? So in the string variable we have the file name. We are again using the J option pen. It's just kind of a pop-up screen. You can give the input, okay, and then we are saying at first the data input stream is null, and then using the try block, okay, we are trying to access that file, okay. If that file is not there, again it's kind of same, the file not found exception we are trying to catch, right? And then we are just saying that this input stream is null, and then we are returning this input stream, right? So from this, what you can assume is that the finally block is optional. It's not like you have to give that, right? So if you want to give that, it's your choice, but it's optional. There's no finally block here, right? So if you want to check like whether it's come to the finally block or it's executed successfully, you can give it, or you can put some message in the finally block. Otherwise, it's not necessary, it's optional. So you can only go like write the code for try and catch block even, okay, clear? So this file also yeah, yes, go on.
Is there any exception to catch all the other exceptions? Is there any keywords to generalize the exception to catch, like file no found exception? There are no input not file exception, IO not file exception. Is there any one keyword to
So
generalize all of them?
the thing is that, let me so you can get all your exceptions, like if you just search in Google, okay, so you will get all the list of your exceptions, and then at the very end of our today's class we'll learn that how you can create your own exceptions. You can create your custom exception as well, okay. So let me give you a link for where you can find all the exceptions of Java, so that you can have a look like what type of exceptions is available already in Java, right? Okay. Maybe I will just post a link in your Nexus with that. Okay,
Thank
clear?
you.
So that you can have like so what kind of exceptions you have available in Java and how they work. Okay, regarding that, clear?
Clear.
Any more question?
Proceed, please.
Do you have any other question?
No, sir.
Okay, sure. Okay, so going back to the slide, if we have this kind of exception, so this is all about the get file, right? So we have another two file. One is get file, another is get total, right? And there is close file, right? So what about get total, right? So what it will do is basically you have a file, right? And then what we're doing here, we are accessing like how many lines we have in that file. Okay, so if you can remember, like whenever we have the read binary file, it's kind of you know that we are reading integer one by one, right? Okay, so that is what we are doing in this method. Okay, so at first we have a boolean variable called end of file, and we put it false. Okay, now we are using a while loop. We are saying that not end of file. That means that while end of file is false now, so not false equal to true, right? So whenever it's true, it will work, right? So whenever we have the end of file is true, you know that then not true will be false, and then we will not accessing this while loop, right? So inside this while loop, what we're doing, we are just creating, we already declare actually I, okay. So we are just having this integer, okay, and then we are just in our total variable, we're just increasing that I. Okay, clear? So it will just say like how many time we are kind of reading a line. Okay, so inside the catch block, if we have this end of file occurs, it will be true, right? So if end of file occurs, if the catch block, okay, so we are just having this boolean variable, we are setting it true. Okay, assign the value true. Okay, clear?
Yes.
Okay, so this is one catch, right? So I said that there is no limitation like how many catch you will use. So you can use as many as you wish. So this is like end of file exceptions. You can create another IO exceptions. That means that actually there is some reading problem from the file. Okay, and then you can just show the message like error and exception occur reading the file. And also then you are just assign the true value to the end of file, right? So there can be two things. One is like you are reading line by line and you are kind of the very end of line, right? So then end of file is true. Another is that you cannot access the file. So either way you have to terminate, right? So whenever you are very end of the file, you have to throw the end of file exception or UF exception, right? And whenever you cannot access the file, that is your IO exceptions, right? So you have to be careful that you have to think like what kind of exceptions you may have, right? Okay. So that you can control that. Okay. So far, whenever you are accessing here, like whenever you are accessing a file or try to read file, there can be no more these two error, right? Okay, so we all know that there cannot be possible of that more than two of error regarding this file. So that's why like we have to list all of those catch things, and inside the catch we have to do that exception things. Okay, is it clear? Any questions with this get total method? Okay. So then we have at last the close file method actually. So what we're doing, we're just closing the file, right? So we are saying that whatever the input stream we are using, we're saying input stream dot close. We are also showing some message using the J option pan, that is program terminate normally, right? So if we cannot close the file, so suppose there was a problem in opening the file, right? So if you don't open a file, you actually cannot close the files, right? So also then you are catching that exceptions, that is the IO exceptions, and you are saying that error and exception occurred closing the file because you didn't open the file actually, right? So you cannot close that file for sure, right? So those kind of things. Okay, clear? Okay, so maybe we can go for an example here. So this is actually handle file not found exceptions, right? Okay. So if we compile it and run it, yeah. So this is the one actually we're just saying, right? So if you run it, you know that it will just ask for a file, right? So this is the G option pan. Okay. So suppose inside this project I have like a student, so I did a typo, right? Student dot java, right? Okay, so the message I'm getting error file not found, right? And then where I have a finally block here, so it's just showing me finally clause executing. Okay, and we're done. And then if we run it again and then give a correct file name here, suppose student dot java, right? Okay, and then it will say here success file found, clear. And then the finally block is also executing. Okay, so this is the very first example of how you can handle any kind of uh, file exceptions things using try catch block. Okay, clear? Any question regarding these? Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Must this be handled with J option pen, or can we use
No.
scanner to run it?
J
If
option
we
pen
do,
is just an option. You can use normal scanf. Yes.
okay.
Okay. J option pen is just an option. So if you don't want to use that, it's optional actually. Right? Okay.
Okay.
Clear? Any further question? Okay. So going back to slide, you know that how to handle exception. We can catch and handle exception, right? And then we do not have to abnormally terminate a program for sure. So that's the like advantage of using the try catch block, so that whenever you have a problem, you are catching that problem and you are having a solution ready in your catch block, right? Kind of this. Clear? So now we are kind of like the end of the very last topic of the exception handling. This is actually this exception handling. We don't have a very long topic. This is the last topic that is okay. One person is want to join. Okay, I just admit them. So how we can then generate a custom exceptions, right? So in general, we are saying that this is not recommended. Okay.
हाँ देखिए मैं क्लास चलती पई है बोल दो
So anyone has question? Any one of you has any question? Okay. So anyway, we can continue. So what we are saying here, so in general, we are saying that this is not recommended. What we are saying also, we are saying that, you know, that before doing your custom exceptions, okay, so search for every exception that is already there in the subclass of throwable. Okay, so now if we go back to our flowchart of this or UML diagram of this throwable, you know that before creating any custom exception, you have to find the base fit, like which class is the base fit, like whatever the error you are trying to have or you are predicting to have. Okay, so if the here if you have this one, or like if you just search with throwable exception in Java, you will get this whole flow chart actually, like whatever it's available, like you can see many dot dot here, right? So this dot dot actually it will reveal like all of the list of the exceptions. Then you can just go through each of the exception, like whatever the best fit in your criteria. But if it is not fit of any of the exceptions, then only you should create your custom exception, otherwise not. Clear? So that is what we're trying to say in this slide. That is, in general, it is not recommended. Before developing a separate exception class, the extensive set of subclasses of throwable, okay, should be examined for one that fits. Clear? And then if it is not, this is the way we can have our custom exception. Okay. So you know that we have actually two classes under this exception class, right? One is IO exception, another is runtime exception. So whenever we have a checked exceptions that belongs to the IO exception, whenever we have unchecked exceptions that belongs to the this runtime exception class, right? So actually we need to extend those class whenever you want to use the custom exception also. Okay. So subclass exception, if you require a checked exception, and okay, so we need to so a custom exception is one that extends either exception or runtime exception. Okay, so exceptions belongs to the checked exceptions and runtime exception belongs to the unchecked exception, that is the logical error things. Okay, So there's this subclass exception if you record it. So I already discussed it. Okay. So now we are going for example. Okay. And that example is, suppose you have an employee and you are going to check whether that employee has a valid scene or not, right? So maybe the example can be invalid scene exception, right? Okay. So this is the one we are creating now. Okay. The very first file can be the name of the class of that exception. Okay. So what we are having here, our name is invalid scene exception, right? Okay. And like we said, it needs to extend the exceptions, right? Okay. So this is a checked exceptions, right? Okay. So what are the fields related to this exception? So you only have one field, right? And that is the scene number, right? And if you think about the scene number, uh, most probably it better fit if we have the scene as string, right? Okay. So we have a constructor here as well, taking a string, clear, and then we are just assigning the value. Okay. And also we have a getter method here, right, that just return the scene number. Okay. So now what we are doing here, so this is all about the exception class we just built, right, a custom exception called invalid scene exception. Okay, clear. And then this is the employee class we want to check whether it's working fine with that scene number or not. So we have this name of the class called employee. You know that whenever we are having that constructor of the employee, we are throwing that exceptions, okay? Because inside the constructor, we are checking that if the validate scene, so this validate scene actually a method of this employee class, okay? If it's return false, it will throw that new invalid scene exceptions. Okay. So maybe you can go for the example here. Just a moment. So this is the employee class. We can have a look here. So this code I already uploaded to your Nexus. You can have a look also. Okay. So what we are doing here, okay, so at first we are saying in the constructor that this method throws these invalid exceptions, right? And then also we are saying here, we are calling a method, okay? So this method is actually whatever you need to check whether a scene is valid or not. So suppose you know that the user can give like null or this length, if it should be exactly 9, right? So the scene number is only 9 digit or character, right? So not character, actually digits, right? So if it is null or the length is not equal to 9, for sure it should return false, right? Also we are checking like whether the validity of scene, like what's the logic, so you can also get the logic from this code, right, how to validate a scene. Okay, so this is our employee class, right? So now what we are doing here, and this is our just custom exception, we call it invalid scene exception, right? Okay, clear. So we have just a variable, we have a constructor and just a getter method, nothing else. Okay. So now what about how we can test it, right? So what how we can design the test code, right? Okay. So the name of our code, like the class is test new exception or custom exception, right? So it has a main method for sure, right? And what we're doing here, okay, so you know that we are just creating the instance of employee using new employee. This is a valid scene number, right? This is a name and this is the particular role. Okay. So then if it is success, right, and then it will print it, right? Otherwise, it will go to this catch part, right? So now this name should be exactly same, whatever the name you created your new class name invalid scene exceptions, right? So you have to be careful about that. Okay, so this name should be same as this, right? So that's one we just created. So we put here in the catch block. Okay, so you may wonder that you may think that inside these custom exceptions we don't have many line number of code, like how you can print, right? Or how how this can be solved, right? So here it's just an skeleton, right? So whatever you want to show in to the user, actually you are trying to do it here. Okay, you know that we are printing a message, right? We are saying that error creating employee, right? And then we are saying the provided scene. So here is a trick. So we are saying e dot get scene, right? So this is the method we created in our custom exception, right? So this is the same method, right? Okay. So this is the instance of that class, and then instance or object of that class, and we are just calling that function, right? So it will show in a nice way that error creating employee, and then it will show the provided scene. So suppose the second example, this is wrong, right? It's starting with A, right? So this is an invalid scene, right? So it will show that scene, and then it will show is invalid, right? Also it will at last it will just print stack trace. Okay, so what we are doing here, we are kind of building our own exception, right? So if you don't want to do these things here, there is a way, right? You can just create another function here, right? Show message or something, right? And then also you can just, rather than here, you can just call e dot show message or something and put the same thing inside there. That's also possible, right? So however is you are designing, it will work. Okay. So any question regarding these files or this code, how we are making the custom exception? Anyone? Does anybody have any question regarding how we are making the custom exception? Okay. So now maybe we can run it. So you can see that the first one, it's saying that create okay, right? Okay, and the second one actually it throws this exception, right? Because it's starting with this A, right? That is invalid, right? Here. So going back to the slide, okay. So we already discussed about this one. And now we are kind of end of this topic called exception handling. So far, in a summary of what we know so far, like two important categories of exception, right? One is unchecked. What means unchecked? Like this is kind of logical error, like array index out of bound, or maybe division by zero error, or maybe null pointer error. So those are all unchecked error. Whenever you have a logical error inside your code, that is the unchecked exceptions. Okay, and whenever you have the file related things or IO exception things or any kind of thing, you can again recover from there, or maybe it's just like input. Suppose I already gave you one example, like if the file name is not, like maybe a typo, you can give another time the file name, right, and it will work. So you can recover from there. So those we are calling the checked exceptions. Okay, so now we have this try catch block things to handle the exception handling, right? Okay, we went through two examples. One is file not found, another is end of file things, right? And then at the very last, we saw that how we can create our own exception, that is called the custom exception, right? So if you want to handle the checked exception, you need to extend the exception class. And if you want to handle the custom exception of unchecked exception, then you need to extend the runtime class. Okay, clear? So that will end actually today's discussion. So or today's class. So I will be available from 12:45, like after 10 minutes. If you have any question regarding today's class or regarding your assignment number 3, and also like two things from one of your friend Chima, like one is what kind of exception available in Java. I will post a link. Another is so he has particular question regarding the assignment. Is all about, I think, exceptions. So I will suggest you to just post in the discussion forum, and then we will discuss it from there. Okay. So does anyone have any questions regarding anything now?
Yeah. Do you have any plan for the final exams? What is it gonna look like, and
Still it's not
how is it gonna
decided that
happen?
still it's not decided actually, because you know that any kind of gathering is forbidden now, right? So so if we have the classroom exam, there can be chance of spreading the virus, right? So in UFM, they are thinking that the the final exam can be conducted by also kind of this Nexus platform. Like there are some options, like we can do it online also, but for UFW it's not. So still it's not decided. So you will, I will let you up. Okay, I will keep you updated, like how it will be or when it will be. For now, only maybe concentrate on assignment number 3, and then you have coming the lab number 10, right? Okay. Also, you can see the difference in lab. So previously, if you go to your ROAS, it was saying that base 10 will be counted from 11, right?
Mm.
And now actually base 9, so base 9 will be counted actually. So the thing is that also you will have two more, like 2 days for submitting the lab problem also. And also your TA is available on maybe online or by email. Okay, I think you guys have your TA's email address, right? If you have any questions, you can, I think, email her. And then if you need like kind of video conferencing, maybe you can request her. I think that's also possible. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other further question? Then our today, next week discussion will be on recursion. Okay, so I will upload the slide soon, and then we will see you guys online class on Tuesday then. Okay. So again, I will just let you know that inside our Nexus, inside communications, we have a link for assignment discussion. If you have any problem regarding the assignment, you can post it there also. And today I have the officer. If you have any problem or any question, you can contact me if you by email, or if you need the video conferencing, I'm also available in Zoom. Okay, clear? Okay then, see you soon. Bye then.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, bye everyone.